Live. I'm Rhett Power, your host. Welcome. It's a great day at home in quarantine. I'm calling these quarantine conversations because I don't know about you, but I'm at home for the next few weeks, I think. And why not get on the phone and on live and have great conversations that can help us get through this crisis together. Now, we do the program normally every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 12 noon. And today's no exception. We broadcast on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. I think I left something out. And LinkedIn, yes, obviously. And the fun part about all that is that it's interactive. And so ask your questions. Type away, ask your questions, because that's why we're here. We're here to get answers for you to the questions that you have. We're here to learn from the best of the best. We've got best-selling authors. We've got corporate CEOs. We've got world-class coaches, and we're here to learn from them on how we can get better at what we do, and particularly in this crisis, how we can lead better. Now, if you like the program, give it a like or share so that your network can benefit from these conversations as well. And today, I've got someone you probably already know. Chester Elton. He's the apostle of appreciation, and he's going to preach to us today, hopefully, a little bit. He's a co-founder of the Culture Works, a global training company based out in New Jersey. He's a multiple award-winning New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author of books like All In. I think you've probably read the Carrot Principle, and his latest, Leading with Gratitude. His books have been translated into 30 languages and sold over 1.5 million copies, probably more now. He's a global guru, named by Global Guru, one of the top leadership experts and one of the top organizational culture experts in the world. But more importantly, and he's a Marshall Goldsmith 100 coach, which is very important. But the best thing about Chester is that he's an amazing person. And he's a really giving person. Chester, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for the invitation. Great to be with you. And you're right; these are unusual times.
Yes, sir, my friend. They are indeed. What was interesting, we're on Marshall's call in the mornings, and Peter Bregman said something yesterday that I thought was really interesting. He was talking about the story about being on the phone with a Silicon Valley CEO, and in the background he heard the small child playing in the back, and we're at this really interesting time of sort of this intersection with family being at home and working from home, and that intersection of family and work, which we often try to separate. So I thought that was interesting. Any advice for people or any thoughts for people who are trying to sort of cope with this new reality that we have?
Absolutely. I mean, just embrace it. Ever since we got our smartphones, nobody works 9 to 5 anyway. Work is life, life is work. Work bleeds into your life, life bleeds into work. Just, if you've got video conferences and your little kid comes up, put them on your lap. I mean, embrace it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, why not? I think it's going to be the new normal, and people are going to say, look, we're all working hard. We've all got families. It's going to happen. Let's just smile and laugh about it and move on. In fact, what better way to cheer up an online meeting than to have a little kid jump in and ask a couple of questions? I honestly believe that those little light moments of life are going to be ever more important as we learn how to do business in a new way. And do it, visually and video like we're doing today. So my advice, go for it. Keep your kids, bring your dog, put a parrot on your shoulder, do the pirate thing. It'll be awesome.
Well, I was thinking too, it's a way to get people I've got teenagers, right? To bring them into my world a little bit, right? And show them a little bit about what I actually do. Because there's somewhat of a mystery probably to them to an extent, right?
I think a great point on that in that bring your family into your business, bring them into your lives so that they really do see what's going on. We talked earlier about this as a generation that hasn't really gone through hard times. And interesting, when we wrote our book, Leading with Gratitude, at the end, we have the baker's dozen. How do you take gratitude
Right.
home? And I'll tell you what was great is all the great leaders that we interviewed, and many of them, whether it's, Gary Ridge at WD-40 or Alan Mulally at Ford, and even Ken Chenault, the recently retired CEO of American Express, they all expressed and led with gratitude in their personal lives. And one thing that popped up that I loved in our baker's dozen was, teach your kids to be grateful for hard times. And I know that sounds, it sounds harsh. When we go through these hard times, we should be asking ourselves, rather than why me, which is the first thing, why is this happening to me? And change it to, what am I supposed to learn? And so I think that this episode that we're going through, and hopefully it'll be shorter than is predicted, this is a great time to teach our kids, look, when hard times come, this is how you dig in. And we can do hard things. Isn't that? I think there's an opportunity for us as parents, as we bring our kids into our lives, that say, hey, look, we can do this. We can do it. And we can get through hard times. It's fascinating, isn't it?
That's fantastic. But what a life lesson, right?
You got it. You got it. What better way to teach your kids that, look, life is not a bowl of cherries. My father had a great expression. He says, just nobody goes through life unscathed. Nobody.
That's right. Period.
Yeah. Things are going to happen. Brace yourself. Be ready for it, and learn and move on.
What a beautiful thing. I mean, in the sense too of maybe even bringing them into our decision making around things right now, right? And let them hear what my wife and I talk about in terms of making decisions for what we're doing right now, how we're handling this, and that might be really wise.
Oh, sure. I love parents that sit down with their kids and say, here's the family budget. So when they say, hey, my buddy just got a new bike, how come I don't have a new bike? So, well, great, we can get you a new bike. Where's that coming from? You want to open a lemonade stand and make a few more bucks, then great. Because if we get the bike, then what do we not get? And I think that conversations, sometimes we think as parents, we want to shield our kids from all of that. I don't think so. I think you let them in. I think you let them know, whether you're privileged or not, this is the way life works. And the more we bring them into our lives, the more we will be invited into their lives. And I think that really is the ties that bind.
Yeah, I think you're right. What do you think right now? And we're going to get to the book. I want to get to the book, but I've got you here, and I've got you I've got you captively here for a few minutes. So I want to pick your brain on a couple of things. What do our teams need from us right now as leaders?
They need just really candor, just honest, open candor. Adrian Gostick is my co-author, and we've written a couple of articles lately. And I think one that really resonated was just 4 ways to keep your employees engaged, in the face of a national crisis, really in the face of any crisis. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, one of our great role models for this is Gary Ridge. Gary took over as the CEO of WD-40. I know you have a can. Everybody does, right?
Right.
Right in the height of the last big recession, 2007, 2008.
Right.
And his attitude was, let's not waste a good crisis. Yeah, and you got to love that attitude.
I like that.
Yeah, let's not waste a good crisis. Let's double down. And so what they were very disciplined and very intentional about was keeping people connected. Okay. And this is something that you should expect from your leaders. And if you want to be an extraordinary leader, stay connected, right? And that comes with just open and honest candor. My co-author Adrian has a great expression. He says, "Leave the pillows at home." These are hard conversations, and it's okay. Right. We're not here to scare the crap out of you. We're here to share what is going on, and that's the next step. Really share everything, honest and open. Because that dispels a lot of fear. When there's a lack of information, just as humans, we jump to the negative because that's how we protect ourselves. We prepare for the worst. And when you've got that open and honest candor, trust levels go up, right? I know what my assignments are. To your point, it's like inviting your kids into your budgeting, right? Invite your team in. This is the reality. Here's what needs to be done. Here are our resources. Let's dig in.
What is on the same sort of kind of on the flip side of that? Is it okay right now? Because I know a lot of businesses are suffering and they're in crisis, and there's no one I don't think that's going to not feel this in some way. But on the same token, we are, every couple of days is a new normal, and we're things are changing pretty rapidly. 2 days ago we were talking 2 weeks. Now we're talking 8 weeks, there's some school districts that are canceling the rest of the school year. So we could be in this thing until June, July. We could be in here for a while. So in saying that, what do we expect as leaders? How do we put expectations on our employees and our teams?
Well, see, I think you've hit on a couple of really important points in that the information is ever changing. And
Right.
so I think you've got to be really candid with your people about that. Say, look, this is what we're talking about today. Tomorrow it could change.
Okay.
I've got family in Canada, and today they announced they're closing the Canadian border except for essential, services.
Right.
And services. So what was normal today is not normal tomorrow. So you've got to let your people know that expectations are going to change, and they're going to be changing constantly. And so along that, one of our other 4 steps is look for small wins. Look for those little things that are going right and be very encouraging about that as often as you can. And sometimes it's going to be a micro win. Right. The internet didn't go out today. Woohoo! So this idea of building momentum and letting people know. Alan Mulally was great about that at Ford, celebrating the little wins to build some momentum, so that when the big obstacles come, you've got some momentum to push through. And so this idea of staying connected, open and honest, being very candid, and at the same time looking for small wins to be encouraging, because there's going to be a lot of bad news. It's going to continue to be bad news for the next few weeks, few months. We don't know, right? And then the last thing coupled with all of that is paint the roadmap of optimism. Stay optimistic. We've got resources. We've got people. We've got you. We're piling up these small wins. As the information comes in, we're going to need you to be hyper engaged to solve these problems, and we will. The old adage, this too shall pass, right? We will get through it. Right. It'll run its course eventually, and we want to be stronger for it. That was the great thing that Gary Ridge did at WD-40, is he doubled down on their training, on their coaching, on their research and development. And when they came out of it, they were up like 30%, and they've never looked back. So it's really interesting where you look at the last recession as, oh my gosh, how devastating it was. That was a pivot point for ridiculous productivity for WD-40. So you've got to keep that in mind. Say, well, we're going to hit record levels of unemployment. Say, well, a record level of unemployment is 15%. You know what that means? 85% of people are still working.
And right.
And let's focus on them too. Let's not forget, what Amazon just announced, they're hiring 100,000 more people because everybody's shipping stuff to home. Well, there's 100,000 jobs, right? So, there's optimism about, yes, we are in tough times. No doubt about it. We're not going to sugarcoat it. And at the same time, let's look to the future and how can we invest so that when this runs its course, we're ready to go. It makes sense, doesn't it?
It does. And it makes sense that to look at it as an opportunity to pivot and to do things differently. And I just see that if you look at it optimistically and you look at it as an opportunity to fix some of the things that you've needed to fix, or to look at some other business opportunities, or to look at a different way to do things, I think it can set you up for success after this and during this. I think it's an opportunity, and I hope that I know there's going to be a lot of pain, but I remain optimistic that it can help us transform our businesses and to be better at what we do.
Yeah, there's no question. It's going to transform a lot of things we do, how we interact, how we educate, how we learn, how our healthcare systems work. You and I were talking about, it's a huge wake-up call for healthcare systems all around the world. The capability. You were talking about in Brazil, to be tested, a car drives up, you do a nose swab, you spit in a cup, and 2 days later, man, do I wish we had that here, because
in a good Brazilian form, I got my red card, which means I'm good, I'm out.
You'd think that would be.
I don't know what a yellow card means, but
yeah. A red card to me, like red card in football, is you get kicked out of the game. You know what I mean? You'd think they'd make that a green card. Be a little more optimistic. I'd say make it orange. That's the color of positivity, right?
That's right. So how do we engage employees now? You hit on it a little bit, but it's more challenging. I mean, we're all going to be remote right now, and we're bad at it anyway.
Right.
If you look at the numbers and the statistics, we're bad at showing gratitude and engaging with our employees in that way. How do we do it today when we're even more disconnected for the foreseeable future? How do we do it, you think?
I'm a real fan of one-on-one conversations.
Okay.
I think the greatest gift you can give your team as a leader is your time. And so while you're sharing all this information and you're having group Zoom and group, Skype, whatever it is you do, or, Hangout, is to then break off and have one-on-ones and say, look, Rhett, let's talk. How are we doing? How are you doing? And I love leaders that ask two simple questions. How are you doing? And how can I help? And I think those start great conversations. And then, particularly at this time, how's your home office set up? What can we do to help you there? Do you need a better microphone? Do we need to upgrade your internet? What can I do to help? And so, you say, well, gosh, now I'm doing so much more with less. I don't have time to do that. Yeah, you find the time. You better find the time. Yeah, and the conversations don't have to be an hour and a half. These conversations, once you get in the rhythm, can be 5-minute conversations, 10-minute conversations. Make sure you're keeping your record and keeping up on stuff, right? Yeah. Nothing's worse than the rock band that takes the stage and says, "Hello, Cleveland," and they're in Detroit. So as a leader, think like a rock star, I guess is what I'm saying, and make sure that you got the names right and the families right and the situation right, and set your people up for the big win. And I think in those one-on-ones as well, all 4 of those things apply. Stay connected. I'm going to give you some time. Be really honest and open and candid with the information. Let's look for those small wins. And in these one-on-ones, and come right out and say, look, I need you to be optimistic. I don't want you to be Pollyanna. I don't want you to be goofy. I want you to be optimistic. We need your head in the game. The team needs us to stay positive. And having those one-on-ones, I think, goes a long way, so that when you come together as a collective, we're all in sync. We've got a relationship, and we can move forward. Huge fan of one-on-ones, particularly in times of crisis.
I've got a guy that I coach, and I do some consulting with him. And one of the things that he does, he probably took this from your playbook. He, for years and years, has been he sets the expectation with everybody that works for him. He's got about 250 employees, and he goes to lunch with everybody, with an individual every day of the week. He goes to lunch or goes on a walk, does something with each employee in the company at least once a year, but he does it every day of the week. And he tells his managers, look, I'm going to pull your guy off the production line. I'm going to pull your guy out of the sales department that day. I'm not trying to go around you, but I just want to know that person. I want to know what makes them tick. I want to know about them, and I want them to know about me. And that's the expectation. And he said, I talked to him yesterday, and he said, most people are at home. He's got a skeleton crew, but he's still doing that from home. And he's doing it. He says, bring your lunch to a Zoom call. I'm going to have my lunch at 12. Join me. And he's still scheduling those one-on-ones with people in this. And he's doing I think he's doing a bunch of things right. He's doing some big town halls and he's doing those, but he's still doing his daily one-on-one with everybody in the company. I thought that was brilliant.
I love that. He's built up a huge bank of goodwill, right? And he knows his people. And so when they start to stress, he's got a relationship. That is time ridiculously well spent over the years that now in crisis, he's going to pay huge dividends because he knows their work. He knows them. I guarantee you, he knows something about their families. He knows what their stressors are. And he also knows what their motivators are, right?
Right.
He's savvy enough to say, look, this guy needs time with his family. This guy needs time on the road. This guy wants to work in R&D. This guy wants to become a leader. She wants to do this. She wants to do that. And he's attuned to his people. And I guarantee you that as he comes through these tough times, his people are pitching in for him because there's no boss. It's a relationship.
Right. No, he knows who his internal influencers are, and he knows it's where all of his innovation comes from, and he'll gladly admit that. But he knows who to lean on and who he can go to make people, because he knows that he's got to rely on other people in the company to who are nervous and who are worried to calm some of those fears, right? Because they're going to listen to the people inside the company that they trust.
Yeah, and see how smart is that to know who the influencers are. I love the way you put that. So when stuff gets crazy, he knows exactly who to go to, right? Hey, Sarah, come here. I need your help. People are freaking out. Yeah, and isn't that interesting? He knows that when he says stuff, how it'll be received, and he knows when they say stuff, how he can amplify the message and clear up any mysteries or.
He says, it's taken a couple of years for people to really trust it. He said that the first year or so, people thought it was a really strange thing. They'd never been asked by the boss for their opinion or their thoughts or their right. And so over the years, it has developed into something that people look forward to. And but for new people, for new employees, for people coming into the company, and initially when he started it was. People were very wary of it, but it over time they understand that it's just what he does, and he wants to know, and he truly wants to know.
Yeah, Amy Edmondson, who we featured in our book and actually endorsed the book, and a huge thought leader at the Harvard School of Business, she talks a lot about psychological safety. Is it safe? And see, what your friend has done with these years of lunches is he's created a safe place for people. And boy, you cannot underestimate that. Now, you also said something really important. It took time. It took time. So a lot of leaders are going, well, I'm open and honest. Well, yeah, you are now, right? You got to, your people have known you for 10 years and it's not flipping a switch. I mean, you do need to flip the switch. What I'm saying is that it's going to take time for them to trust you. So I love the guy that you're coaching where he said, look, I've made this investment already. So he's already in a good place to rally his people. That's a great lesson. It's also a great heads up for leaders that maybe don't have that bank of goodwill, that as they start this new normal, it's going to take time. People aren't just going to say, oh, I trust you now. Well, sure. It's going to take time. Anything worthwhile does. And so don't get frustrated. Don't back off. Lean in and make sure you invest the time to build up that trust.
It's just like putting money in the bank and compound interest, right? It's just, it takes time for that compound interest, but once once you've done it for a few years, you start seeing the benefit of it. And I think that's sort of the way I would look at it.
Einstein said that compound interest was one of the most powerful forces in the universe.
Rarely understood, though, right?
Yeah.
How in the book, you guys, you kind of lay out 8 ways that we can show gratitude. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, and it was so interesting that, well, one of the reasons we wrote this book is we just felt the timing was right with the online discourse being so vitriolic and so, just nasty, bullying in schools, and even the political discourses. People aren't talking to each other; they're just screaming at each other.
Right.
And so, as we started to look at the workplace and how that impacted the workplace, what were some of the best practices? And so we came up with these, 8 leadership practices, and actually we divided them into 2 camps. There's the seeing, and then there's the expressing. And I think that's important to differentiate, because just like the leader that you're coaching, you've got to see what's going on. We talk about walking in your team's shoes, knowing their jobs, knowing what the stressors are. One of my favorites, and we won't go into all of them, then you wouldn't have to buy the book, right?
I won't do that to you.
Yeah, one of my favorites is assume positive intent. And that's a hard one. Assume positive intent. Hubert Joly, the guy that turned around Best Buy, $1 billion deficit to $1 billion surplus. He says, look, I may be naive. I just assume everybody comes to work wanting to do a good job. And in trying to do a good job, they make mistakes. It's not personal. It's not that they're trying to ruin my day. I don't know of anybody that would get up and say, my goal for the day. I live in Jersey now, right? Grew up in Canada. I'm living in Jersey. You know what I'm saying? My goal for the day, I'm going to go to work, and by noon, I'm going to screw up 4 times. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to keep track. You watch me. I'm going to hit that goal by 11:30. No, people come to work wanting to do a good job. And then along the way, they make mistakes. And the great leaders go, you know what? I'm going to assume positive intent. Let's fix it. Let's learn from it. Let's move on. And talk about psychological safety. Not afraid to make a mistake. That's a very healthy culture. If I'm afraid to make a mistake, I'm not going to innovate on anything. And when I do make a mistake, I'm going to hide it. I'm going to blame it on that guy.
I'm going to pass the buck.
Right. I'm going to pass the buck. So I love, walk in your people's shoes, get to know them, and assume positive intent. Absolutely assume positive intent. Now, on the expressing side, know your people. Tailor your gratitude to that person. Okay. Some people want the spotlight. Give it to them. You're having a team huddle. Sarah, man, you're knocking it out of the park. Boom, right? Other people say, look, I don't like the spotlight. One-on-one, great. So that, my voice is heard. You saw what I did. I've got a relationship. Great. And then if it comes time to where you really can express something in a tangible way, maybe somebody wants to do an online course and learn how to code. Somebody else said, what I'd really love? I'd like Friday off. My kid's got a tournament. I want to be home, right? Great. Yep. There's a big difference. I will tell you a cute story to illustrate the point. So a friend of mine, he's working in Detroit, always wanted to work in New York, right? So he goes to New York, he interviews, he gets the job. He and his wife are just so jazzed. They've always wanted to live in New York. Next day, overnight package shows up from his new manager. Awesome, right? Opens it up. It's a big bottle of champagne. How cool is that? Wow. Guy's in AA. The guy's in AA. So you gotta go, look, assume positive intent. All the best intentions. Didn't know the guy. How much more fun would it have been if he'd said, look, I know you and your wife love a good night out. Go to the best restaurant in Detroit, send me the bill, and celebrate. Right? Probably would have cost him about the same.
Yeah.
And yet the difference, extreme. So know your players, right?
Yeah, we one of the things I think that sort of transformed my company, and I give this a lot of credit, and what is not our idea. We started a potluck lunch.
Love those.
And we had a small team at the time, and everybody brought their favorite dish, and they brought but what it ended up doing is that instead of everybody leaving for lunch and going their separate ways, it started as once a month, and then it started every week. It ended up, being once a week. But it really brought people together, and it was a way for us to learn about them. It really was a way for us if I could go back in history now, I'd do that one-on-one like my coaching client does. But it really did give us a chance to talk and learn, and you can do that over food really well. For some reason, that really brought us together as a team,
Yeah.
and it's where we fixed our mistakes. It's where we ended up, having it almost as a team meeting, but over a meal, and which is a lot less threatening. It puts a lot. I mean, you're not putting people on the spot, right? And we were able to fix a lot of our issues and figure out things to make things work better just over lunch by potluck. And I gained a lot of weight because of that, but there was some great macaroni and cheese and banana pudding, but nonetheless,
a lot of comfort food, right? I'll tell you, a friend of mine, you say, look, you should never talk about religion and politics, right? They're just a lot of friction there. Good friend of mine said, the two things you could always talk about is food and family, right? And you talk about solving problems. There's something about breaking bread with people. And I think we've got to get good about doing that virtually, right?
Yeah.
I love the potluck because, if you've got some folks from South America, you've got some folks from Africa, they bring cool food. I mean, they bring cool food, right? Yeah. So, it's interesting. One of the things we talk about in the book around the expressing side is to do it now, do it often, and don't be afraid, right? Yeah. So the idea of when you see something going well, let people know right away. You're going to say, oh, I'll remember. No, you won't. No, you won't. I'm lucky I can find my way home, I mean, so do it now. Like the potluck, lunches and stuff. Wow, that pie, that's amazing. We would do that immediately, right? Yeah. So do that in the workplace. Do it often. Now, this is a fun one because, people say, oh, gratitude, you can overdo it. And people need too much gratitude, right? I laugh at that because, we have a database of just over 1 million engagement surveys, right? Just over 1 million. And when you look at company engagement reports, whether you're doing it with Willis Towers Watson or Gallup or wherever, where I feel recognized at least once in the last 7 days, do you know where that shows up in the list? It's almost always near the bottom. And, I coach like you do and say, well, you can overdo it. I go, really? When was the last time, just for fun, when was the last time you went home and said to your partner or your spouse, you know what? Couldn't get anything done today. I swear to you, every time I turned around, it was like somebody was handing me a thank you card. It was like cake, balloons. It was I got to work from home if I expect to get anything. Never happens. Never happens, right?
Never.
So this idea of I can do it too much, I dare you. I dare you to do it too much, right? So this do it now, do it often, and then don't be afraid. Like people say, well, if I recognize Susan, Rhett's going to feel left out. I go, well, don't be afraid of that. Because what's the fallback? Well, I'm not going to give anybody express any gratitude to anybody. Oh, wait, yeah, see how that's a great plan. Let everybody feel disenfranchised and worthless. And then what I love about say, well, I'm afraid to miss somebody. Well, then you know what you want to do? You want to make it peer to peer. And that's where it gets really good. To your friend, the influencers. Sometimes we think gratitude, it's this leadership, management, supervisor, it's all top down. It's not. When you get it peer to peer, that's when you get a culture of gratitude. And that's where things get really good, really fast. People feel safe. They can innovate. Gary Ridge talks about a tribe. He says, he's very big on tribes. He says, because when you're in a tribe, what do? You defend each other. You look out for each other. You cheer for each other. We're safe in the tribe. And I love that analogy. When you start getting gratitude being peer to peer, good things happen.
How do you build that?
It takes time. There are two words.
How do you start? Because I mean, that's the challenge, right? I mean, how do you, as a leader, get in the habit of it? I mean, right. Are there something concrete I can do right now and say, I mean, do I even schedule it? Do I even go that far?
Yes.
Say, I'm going to walk around right now and I'm going to tell Sally, great job. I'm going to tell Bill, wonderful. You did great on that report. Is that a way to get in the habit of doing it?
You bet. Two words, intentional and disciplined.
Okay.
You need to be intentional about it You're every lunch, he's eating lunch with somebody. That's very intentional. That's very disciplined.
Okay.
I'll give you a great tip. Guy we know in Dallas, Texas, Carlos Aguilera, he puts 10 coins in his left pocket every day. And he sets a goal to have 10 positive interactions with his people every day. And he keeps track by moving a coin from his left pocket to his right pocket. Now, whether you're doing it on your phone or you're checking it in your diary, whatever you do, he says, look, if I get to lunch and I've got 8 pennies or 8 coins in my left pocket, not doing my job. So that's a trigger, as our good friend Marshall Goldsmith would say. That's a trigger. There's an article, and I'm going to forget his name. There's a CEO out there. He's got 2,400 employees, and he writes every one of them a handwritten birthday card. Every one of them.
I love that.
Yeah, and is that intentional? You bet. Is he disciplined? He has to be. He's 24. I mean, he's right 20 a day. Wow. And yet that's his way of saying we're connected. I love leaders that have the discipline to say, I saw something great. Let me text you right now. I saw something great. I'm going to pull you aside right now. I'm telling you, it's old school. I love it. Handwritten notes. Nobody does it anymore. You say, how do I know it's timely? You know what? When you put a stamp on it and you mail it to somebody's home, it's always timely because they find the time.
I just got one today, and it was just really touching. And it's like,
and you'll save it, and you'll put it up on the board, and
yep.
I had a habit. Two of my boys were, I live on the East Coast, just outside New York City, and they were out school out west. And I got in the habit. I'd write them a little letter every Sunday and mail it off. And my son, they'd write me back like once every 2 months. It wasn't a quid pro quo. Anyway, I got a lovely letter from my son Brendan when he said, "Dad, I never tell you enough how much I appreciate those little notes." He said, whenever the mail comes in and I see this orange envelope, like orange is my favorite color, if you haven't picked up on that, right? So I get that orange envelope. He said, and this is what I love. He said, I don't always read it right away. Sometimes I'll wait till I'm having a tough day, and then I'll read it, because I know after I read a letter from my dad, I'll feel better about myself. And I thought, wow. It took me 5 minutes to write that letter, put a stamp on it, put it out for the postman. So leaders that have that discipline that say, I'm going to have lunch with somebody every day. You know what? I'm going to write a note to somebody every day. Take 5 minutes. That was the biggest myth that we debunked in our book. The biggest excuse leaders had. I don't have enough time. I'd do more if I had time. Well, you got to eat. Your guy found time. We found that the extraordinary leaders that really were known for expressing gratitude, you know what? It was 2% of their week. It was about an hour out of a 50-hour week. An hour. Come on.
And the next question, and that's a great segue, because the impact, I mean, Gary, WD-40 and Gary's company is a prime example. The upside of creating that culture, right, is phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, you've got numbers that show just how it can just explode your growth and your productivity and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, you go from 280 million to 2.8 billion. That's a pretty good case study right there. How'd you do it?
I mean, yeah.
How you talk to them? How did I do it? Well, I brought everybody together. We created this tribe. We made it safe. We loved each other. We cheered for each other. We protected each other, and good things happened. You go, yeah, but that wouldn't work for me. You go, yeah, probably won't. If you don't try it, it's for sure. It's the old, I missed every shot I didn't take. So this, again, being really intentional and being disciplined about it, and this new normal, this crisis that has thrown everything upside down, is a perfect time to now recalibrate, reset, and say, you know what, we're all in this together, because we are. There's no question.
So, two final quick questions. Put your crystal ball. How do you think this is going to change business? This crisis.
I think
it's going to change it.
Pardon?
How do you think it's going to change it? Things.
Yeah. How can it not? I think we're going to get really good about connecting remotely. I think we're going to get really good at the video conferencing, and I think we're going to get a lot more sensitive about how what we do as leaders ripples through the organization, and what we do as companies, how it ripples through our communities. The world, if this has taught us one thing, boy, we are a lot more interconnected than we ever thought. Like, I think we thought we were. Yeah. This is like, look, what happens in China 2 months later, boom, it's in New York, it's in Brazil, it's in Italy, it's in Spain, it's in the UK. So it's going to really change our perspective. And my hope is it's going to bring humanity back to business. It's going to bring caring back into business. It's going to hopefully teach a lot more leaders to lead with gratitude, to be grateful for people that show up, that work with and for us, that do good work every day. We're going to be a lot more grateful for the guys that drop off the packages, for the people that prepare our food, for the communities that rally around their people that are at risk, taking care of the elderly. You know what I mean? I think it's going to change that whole perspective. And my hope is it softens a lot of hearts, and it brings into play that, look, one of the great lines from one of our interviews that I loved is that gratitude attracts gratitude. It just does. Good people attract good people. And that gratitude has nothing to do with your circumstances and everything to do with your heart. And I really hope that through this crisis, that a lot of hearts get softened, and a lot of leaders back up and go, you know what? It matters what we do. We talk about a culture of gratitude, is that I believe what I do matters. And when I do something that matters, somebody recognizes it and celebrates it. Now, last point is, and I think we're seeing this from our first conversation, is we're going to realize that there are families connected to every employee. They're going to show up in the video conferencing. My son was video conferencing. American Express does this very well, by the way. He was video conferencing, and one of the women on the call, her little 4-year-old came up and hung on her arm, and they went, "Oh, that's so cute." Well, I didn't realize he was on a video call, and I leaned over to talk to him. He goes, "Dad, I'm on." He goes, "You got your 4-year-old? I've got my dad." So, this whole idea of create great workplaces, and don't forget to take it home. Don't leave your best self at work. All these great lessons we're learning, it's going to work with your kids. It's going to work with your neighbors. It's going to work in your communities. Let's care. Let's care a lot more, and let's lead with gratitude. If I don't hold up the book, my publisher gets mad. So
no, I'm glad you did. I want props. I love props, and I was going to ask you to do it because mine's an e-version, and so I'm glad you did.
The other prop we do is, our symbol for gratitude is the carrot. So give people more carrots, less sticks. And so if you take the carrot and you marry it with gratitude, you know what? You're going to have a great culture. I guarantee it.
And they can get that on your website, and they get it through Amazon, right?
Absolutely. We've got a great book website. It's leadingwithgratitudebook.com. There's some great videos. There's a lot of free resources. There's bundles. We're doing a really fun thing right now. We're actually giving away our motivators assessment. Right. So we've got a really cool assessment on what are your key motivators at work. And we've just decided that, look, if you want to find a way to engage your team, let us know how many codes you need. We'll send it out. We'll do a webinar for you to show you how you use it to, you talk about tailoring it to your team, right? Well, when you know what people's key motivators are, nothing better than to have an assessment. So, follow us on LinkedIn. We've got all the stuff there for you to click and request the codes. We spent a lot of time and treasure getting it right. Our hope is to give away 1 million codes. Give away 1 million codes, give you some insights as leaders, you as workers, and our little gift to hopefully get us through this crisis with some positivity. So,
and no better time to do it, really, right? And to take assessment, to take stock of where you are and what people need and what they need right now. I think that's a beautiful gesture. Thank you so much, man.
Well, I'm waiting to see what your report says, Rhett. So we're going to send you a code.
I absolutely.
I think it'll be fascinating.
I think so. Absolutely. And hey, Christy Lawrence, thank you for being on. Meredith Cash Weber, thank you for your comments. Thank you all for joining. And go out and do good work. Take care of your family. Engage with them too. Don't isolate yourself from your family right now. Yeah. Engage with your loved ones and your family, and take care of yourself. And we'll be back tomorrow at another great program. And if you have questions for Chester and I, please put comments in the on social. We'll get to the answers. We had a lot to talk about today and didn't get to some of the questions, but thank you so much, Chester. Thank you, man.
You bet. A little shout out to all the Canadians out there. Here's my pillow. Wake me up when it's hockey season. Hey, Rhett, it's been great. I hope people will pick up the book. I hope you'll use lots of carrots. Ask us for the free code. If we can help, we're there. And you know what, Rhett? I am grateful for our friendship and for this opportunity to be with you.
And we'll put the link in the book in there on the show notes so people can get directly to it. Thank you, brother.
You bet. Be safe, be clean, be healthy.
Any final words? Any final thought?
Yeah, really, I think these kind of conversations and lunches, reach out to your friends and family, have a little video coffee, be aware of people in your neighborhood. I love the article in Canada, there's fear mongering and now there's care mongering. Let's care for each other. And as we talked about, let's be a little more kind, and let's be a little more grateful for the simple things in our lives and the people in our lives. And remember to tell them how much we love them and how grateful we are for them to be in our lives. Send them a handwritten note. Send them a text. Now is the time more than ever. People need to know that they're cared for and they're loved. And nobody does that better than you, Rhett. Nobody.
Oh, well, sir, I don't know about that, but thank you. I try. And I know you do too. And so does the community we're part of.
I have one last thing. We want to start a movement, and it's hashtag find your gratitude.
Hashtag find your gratitude.
Just post a little photo every day or a little thought of something or someone that you're grateful for. I posted home-baked chocolate chip cookies, the first flower in my garden. I think it's important when we're under so much stress, when you get to go outside and go for a little walk, just a good cup of coffee, right? Time with your friend. Hashtag find your gratitude. Let's start a movement and get some positivity out there.
You doing that on LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere?
Anywhere. Do it in all the places. Do it anywhere. And I'll tell you the pictures that pop up of sunrises and sunsets and grandchildren and pets. Awesome.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I saw the flower the other day. I thought that was very nice. Thank you.
Okay, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao. Ciao, ciao, ciao.
All right. Bye-bye.